what were the biggest physical challenges you faced? You obviously had the heat stress, and then obviously that's an inauspicious start, having the first
Mhm.
2 navigating with a fever. I
Yeah.
mean, that must have been emotionally very challenging as well. But what were the major, like, do you have any major injuries or huge fatigue points or breakdown moments in any of these? What was the physical side of it?
No, I mean, it was, the first 2, obviously, I was sick, and then that kinda although the fever broke after the 2nd race, you know, I had, the illness kinda stayed with me. I didn't feel great. I didn't feel strong. Physically, there was nothing major. I had a couple of just aches and pains, but,
And
and
a
that's
and a
just.
blis a good blister.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Um, After Antarctica, I was wearing a specific kind of trail shoe for Antarctica, and I had a blister on the end of one of my toes, and it took over the entire end of my toe and under the nail bed. And I let it go, and then by the end of the 3rd marathon, I thought you should go see the doctor, and so he he fixed it up for me, and off I went. Um, but I think I sent Will a picture.
I got the picture, yes.
Um, so yeah,
Where do I sign up for this event?
Yeah.
Anyway, carry on.
but yeah, I mean, um, those were the biggest. Physically, those were the biggest issues.
So it leads into the mental challenges and roadblocks, and, I mean, I'm sure the sickness side was probably a huge weight on the shoulders, but what sort of the mental side of it? I can't imagine, like, there's an old saying, "Fatigue makes cowards of us all," type thing,
Right.
and you've obviously got the accumulation of fatigue, so I'm fascinated on the mental side of this.
Well, Will and I have talked about this, and when I started training for this event, I worked on the mental side as hard as I did the physical side. I didn't cut myself any slack. I ran 2,500 miles training for this thing
Mhm.
last year, and I ran when I was sick. I ran in all kinds of weather. You know, I ran when I hurt. I ran when I was sleep deprived. I didn't cut myself any slack. So going into and I knew that, with the World Marathon Challenge, I either finished it or I didn't, and there weren't going to be any excuses. And so I just put myself in, as many difficult situations going into it as I could. I didn't ever imagine that I would be hit with all those things at once. The difficult weather, being sick, being sleep deprived, you calorie deprived. But I felt like I was well prepared. And I remember in Antarctica, when I had the fever, and I would have to stop periodically, and I'd be dry heaving. And it's like, well, you got yourself into this, and there's really only one way out. It's to finish, because I'm not going home. And so, you just put one foot in front of the other, and keep going. I just didn't give myself any other option.
What
Yeah, and I'll interrupt here, Matt, and just from a coaching perspective, I mean, obviously going into this knowing that mindset's really critical for this, and because Scott was willing to kind of push himself in all these situations prior, and we had plenty of discussions about it, I knew that his mindset was solid, that, he was gonna do whatever he could do to keep moving one foot in front of the other, and so, that there was a lot of assurance I had, and I think he had as well, the confidence that he could push through these really tough conditions. And we set up some pre-race situations. He did several marathons, and we doubled up clustered runs before his marathons. So he'd have 2 or 3 big days right in a row, and he'd be flying to these marathons. So he would be dealing with flight fatigue and dealing with different protocols he could use to help him in the World Marathon Challenge. So all of that was done very strategically to make sure that he had all the things that he needed going into it. And I felt confident as a coach that he was fully prepared. And I think, Scott, you felt the same way, that you were just going to get it done and there wasn't another option unless somebody was going to wheel you away in the cart or something.
It's the ultimate control the controllables in
Yeah,
many ways. It's like, okay, I can't control the conditions or the fever, but what I can control is where I'm placing my mind and energy. Yeah,
yeah.
it's. I am interested in euphoria a little bit because it occurs. Did you have moments or blocks where perhaps fatigue induced or stress induced that you had these euphoric moments as well? Do you remember? Because I think a lot of people that it's such a big thing that there's a danger that people just can't identify with it at all, and they assume that it's just down in the trenches,
Mhm.
suffering always. So I'm wondering, I assume that you also had these moments of just amazing. I don't want to call it euphoria because it makes it sound like it's peak, but you just had these wells of really positive experiences. Was that along the way?
Yeah, I mean, I had a really good run in Madrid. Um, I felt decent. I was still sick, but I felt decent. The weather was cooler, and the course in Madrid was a racetrack, and so we
Mm,
went 11 times around this racetrack, and it had two really nasty hills in it, and the course kind of banked a little bit because it was a racetrack, but I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the weather was nice, and it was really my first good race, where I felt better than I had the previous three. Um, and then in Miami, that was really great because I was expecting my wife and a couple of friends to show up, but she brought my whole office. And so they surprised me, which was really nice. And so that gave me a boost for the very last one. Going into it because again, we after we ran in Fortaleza, um, we took off that evening from Fortaleza. We arrived in Miami, I think around midnight. We started running by two, or one or two, and so that gave me a boost to finish, and that was one of my better races as well. So
fantastic.
It was your fastest race, yeah.
yeah,
Fastest race was the last race. It's,
Last race, yeah.
yeah.
staggering. This so I got 2 more questions, and I'm gonna ask some lessons, but one, it's funny, when we go away to take people to training camps, and we do that frequently, and we really get people out of their comfort zone
Mhm.
relative to where they're at, but it's a shared experience. There's almost this shared mission
Mhm.
where it's like we're all doing this, and everyone's at very different levels, but
Yep.
something really magical occurs when you take a group of people, and they can be strangers. You get them way out of their comfort zone with a sense of mission, and they're solving challenges together.
Mhm.
This is 60 people, very much a shared mission. Individually, I
Right.
want to try and finish this, but it's all the same. So I am very, very interested in the collaboration, support, sort of team aspect. Was there a team aspect to it? Was it like real camaraderie despite the suffering?
Um, to a certain extent, everybody was there. We were all um, miserable, and trying
Yeah.
to I think everybody had their own way of accomplishing the goal.
Mm.
And it was really interesting to watch. You had what I'd call the elite runners, people that were doing marathon after marathon and, the 3:15 pace or 3:15 marathon. And then you had the people that were really experienced ultra marathoners or marathoners that power walked every race and they're
Oh, wow.
super consistent. And then you had all of us in between. And so, we would, we and it was usually kind of a loop course. And so we'd be passing each other and, we'd give high fives or thumbs up, but everybody kind of had their head down and,
Mm.
and we all made contacts and everything, but everybody was just trying to survive that week, honestly.
Try,
Um,
trying to survive. It's
yeah,
interesting.
and we're on a chat group, and so everybody's chatting and whatnot still. But yeah, it was really about survival that week. We were all rooting for each other, but we were all trying to survive.
And was the finish line and days following, was there, what were the emotions crossing the finish line? And then what often happens is bizarrely, a little bit of a letdown, a little bit of a, did you go through that that process? I'm really interested in the finish line and the subsequent days or weeks.
The finish line, it was great because my family and friends were there, but man, I was tired. Um,
Yeah.
I think I crossed the finish line. I just sat there with my hands on my knees and just for about 5 minutes. Um, so I got back to Houston and being sick, and I think I got 12 hours sleep all week, and I completely crashed. I was wiped out. I'm not one to take naps, but I think I took 6 hour naps for 3 days straight and then slept all night. So I just really needed the recovery. Um, you know, I had I I was aware that after you work on a big goal for a long time, and then when you accomplish that goal, there can be a letdown. So I wanted to avoid that, and so I had a lot of time, a lot of miles to think about what I wanted to do next. And so I immediately jumped right into my next goal so that I could avoid that. And you know,
Come on, it's not a 5K. What
No
is it?
rest for the weary here.
Yeah, what is it? Come on,
um,
what have you two been conjuring up together?
well,
Danger couple.
it kind of evolved where I thought, okay, I want to do 30 marathons this year, and then it turned into 40, and then it's like, okay, well, let me see if I can do 50 marathons in a year. And it's again, I'm still not an experienced marathoner. I'm still learning with every training run, every marathon I do. But I like to challenge myself, and and with Will's help, and if I can stay healthy, then I think it's a good challenging goal. Um,
50 marathons, that's the goal, yeah?
yeah. Well, actually, it's 52, right, Will? Um,
That's right. He said 50. I'm like, "You're 52 years old. You
right.
should at least do
And
52."
there's 52 weeks in the year. Why would you only
I
possibly do
I I
50? You're limiting
I'm
yourself.
Scott's CEO, Chief Enabler Officer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my
So, I
goodness.
mean, it's all on, with me staying healthy, and but
Injury-free and focus on recovery,
right.
and yeah.
Yeah. So, see,
Amazing.
And we have those discussions every week when we have our coaching call
we do.
about your recovery and strength training and doing the things he needs to do,
Yeah.
which isn't a lot of volume at this point because basically we're racing, recovering, getting strong,
Mhm.
and just getting ready for the next
Mhm.
race.
Amazing. Scott, what would be your out of if you had to distill this experience, last question, what would be the top lesson or lessons that you've taken away? What would be the things that you've taken away that maybe can help listeners on their journey?
Um, I think it's finding good people to work with and guide you. Um, I was lucky to meet up with Will, and then I work with a great group of professionals. My chiropractor, Dr. Daniel DeWalch, Dr. Floyd Powell at Ross D. Kelly Jones is my nutritionist. I've got a great PT named Paige McKenzie at Bulletproof here in Houston. And just finding really great people to work with and guide you. I learned different things from each one of those people. I think having a really strong support system um, is key. I'm really fortunate. I've got a really supportive family. I've got a great team here at work. Um, you know, um, and then all those professionals I work with. Um, and then you gotta put in the time, um, but be smart about it. Um,
Put in the right time.
right, and listen to your coaches, and really listen to your body. And look, I'm not always the best at that, but I'm learning with Will's help and all the people I work with. But yeah, I think those are I mean, you got to put in the time, you got to grind, and you got to work on the mental part as much as the physical part.